Hey guys, this is Achilles 157. I'm just continuing my 200 no limit full ring series with 200 big blind play. First, we're going to talk about position, and it's just really important that you guys play more hands but in position when you're playing 200 big blind tables. You don't want to get run over by more aggressive players or laggier players. It's a lot harder to play tight nitty style when you're playing with 200 big blinds because you will get flatted more in position and people will make it a lot harder for you to show down like pocket aces or something like that when your pre-flop raising range is clearly defined as like a really tight range. So you're gonna have to open up your game a lot more and play more hands but in position, and play more multi-way pots but in position. And you want to play more multi-way pots just because most people are misplaying these pots and getting their stacks in too lightly and not really paying attention to how strong people's ranges are most of the time in multi-way pots. And then also you want to table select well so that you have position on the fish. And this is just even more important when you're playing with 200 big blinds because the stack size magnifies the positional advantage. And then next, we're going to talk about how you want to play with more information. And information is important in all aspects of poker. It's most important in cash games as your stacks get deeper and deeper and deeper. And this is because you're playing bigger pots on later streets, and you're just going to see more rivers, and the pot size in the river is going to be even larger. So your decisions have to be more fine-tuned, and you to make the correct decisions, you have to have the most information. So I recommend playing less tables than you would if you were playing 100 big blind tables, and I would recommend paying more attention. Don't surf the internet and stuff like that. You want to be playing nutted draws. You don't want to have to make a really, really tough decision on the river with like a 5 high flush. You want your value ranges to be as strong as possible, and you want to be drawing to the nuts, similar to Omaha. Here I defend this 3-bet with 6-8 suited in the bottom right because we're really, really deep, and this player is really tight. So we expect him to have hands like aces and kings a whole lot of the time. And on this flop, we're looking to peel off one street because we have this gut shot and the backdoor straight. I mean the backdoor flush draw equity, and that's actually a pretty good amount of equity. And as long as he doesn't bet too big, we can profitably peel that off. And sometimes he's not gonna have aces and kings, and sometimes he's gonna have like a random hand like maybe or ace king or ace queen, and we can bring this hand to showdown. But most of the time he's gonna have aces or kings, and hopefully he just doesn't bet that big. Uh, Unfortunately, yeah, as you can see, he's only like 3-betting 2% from the big blind. Unfortunately, he pots it off, and he likely has aces and just wants to get it all in. And yeah, not much you can say about that. I mean, if we had 6-7 or flop two pair trips or something, we'd be stacking him. So I mean, not a big problem. And here we just let out 10-9 suited for protection on this board. On the turn, that queen actually hits his range a lot because hands like queen 10 and queen jack and like 10 jack and all those hands hit the board. And we find it like it's going to be really hard to show our hand down if we check, and we can't really check call and check call the river. So I let out again to try to protect against hands like weaker nines or 6-7 type hands or 5-7 type hands. Not weaker nines. I meant like weaker pairs like pocket sevens or pocket sixes. All nines are like queen nine essentially because of the paired board. But on the river, it just seems like he has a boat or a hand like pocket jacks like way too often. Uh, Here, okay, here with pocket nines, he donked out $10 into the $30 pot. Uh, and then there was this short stacker, JATO3, to act behind. So it's absolutely imperative that you value raise, not only just for value, but to protect, because any hand that JAT03 has is getting like 5-1 odds. So we're just looking to value raise, but we don't want to make it too scary. That's why we only value raise to 29. But then on the turn, even without the 9 coming, we're looking to bet again for value because hands like 5-6 and like 4-5, and all these hands that have pairs and gut shots or pairs and straight draws or top pair, even like pocket sevens and pocket eights. And it just seems like it's there's not too many. Like he's not gonna have pocket tens that often, and he's probably never gonna have pocket jacks. But we did turn a set, so that's good. It makes it a lot easier to value bet, and we just want to bet something that commits us to his stack, but not. We don't want to go all in because that looks a lot more scary, I think. And it's gonna make it a lot harder for him to call or shove with a hand like 4 or 5. Yeah, so we bet 49. It looks like, and get chipped on and snap it off, and he has pocket sevens. So just that's standard, but the key on the flop there was protecting and value raising because he only bet 1/3 of the pot, and that's just unacceptable when you have a strong hand like pocket nines on that board. And I just want to note that pocket nines hand on the turn, how we talked about overbetting in the beginning of the video on the PowerPoint presentation, and how that would be where we have where our opponent has an extremely sensitive calling range to the size of our bet. That is that his range is very elastic. So we don't want to bet something really, really big and get him to fold his elastic range. So I just want to note that, how that would not be a good spot to overbet for value. And here with King Jack, we just bet the flop, repping the queen. We don't expect him to peel us very lightly or to connect with that board that often. There aren't a lot of suited connectors that hit that, and he's not. We don't expect him to float us that lightly either. Here we're just getting crazy odds pre-flop to call out of position with ace queen suited. And then with king queen in the top left, we just decided to check fold that flop because we were playing multi-way against a bunch of people out of position. And the same thing here with ace jack. It's just not a good flop. It crushes his range, and he'd been playing back at me a lot in the past week, so I knew that I was likely to get played back on that flop, and I didn't really have a strong enough hand to do anything about it. Here we're just c-betting with 6-5 suited, planning to take him off of like better, higher cards that would otherwise we wouldn't be able to show down against, and also take him more off against like pocket sixes, pocket sevens, and those types of hands. It's just we're never going to be showing down 6-5 suited, so I thought I would bet and try to win the pot. And here with pocket eights, I just think this is a standard C bet. If we check behind this flop and then call the turn, our hand is face up as like not a king, but something that we want to get to showdown. So I decided to bet here as my best chance of winning the pot, and also betting for value against various draws, or sometimes people will check call like pocket sevens or worse here. But we get really small lead check raised here. And at the time, I was on a bunch of other tables on the side because I was trying to find more deep games to play for you guys, but I didn't really realize how small his check raise is, and it's almost a min check raise. But I can't even pronounce this guy's name, but this guy had been playing back at me a lot lately, and I had a feeling that he was kind of doing something here, like Achilles is gonna bet in position here a lot of the time. So I'm just gonna like check raise and try to get him to fold all of his air. And I kind of thought that that was what he was doing, or he had like a flush draw type of a hand, or maybe like a 9-10 type of hand that I could make him fold on later streets. But I didn't really give him much credit here, and I was planning on just calling and playing the later streets in position, and making a decision about what to do later, whether or not I wanted to show my hand down or I wanted to turn it into a bluff. I think against this guy, this is fine, especially. But on the ace turn, I feel like that card just crushes his range. I feel like he has a hand like, if he's bluffing, he has a hand like ace jack or ace 10 or just random like maybe suited ace with a flush draw or something like that. So I just decided to check back and give up and hopefully show my hand down. And then again, that queen this is not very good for our range. Uh, so I decided to just check and showdown, and he actually had a really strong hand on the flop, which was surprising. But I'm fine with how I played that. I think a lot of the time he's not going to be that strong, and he is going to have like random type of hands or weaker pairs or just medium strength hands that I could bluff him off on later streets if the board didn't run out how it did. And then here with King Queen, just in position with a hand like this that isn't really vulnerable. I'm just looking to check back and try to get value on later streets. Whereas I'm not getting value on that flop for much. But then when he bets half pot, there's really no value in raising. If I raise, I'm representing nothing really. I'm representing like ace five that checked back the flop, and it might be a good spot to raise to make him think that you're bluffing. But I just think that he's just going to give me credit for trips way too often. But on the river, I tried to do something that would maybe look like I was trying to steal the pot with like a worse pair or something that was turning like a 9 into a bluff or something. Uh, and try to get value from a hand like Queen Jack. But he folded, so. Not a big deal. Here's pocket threes just giving up because short stacker who's continuing with a lot of hands that might not even be better than pocket threes on the flop, but just have a lot of equity against pocket threes on that flop. And here we defended pocket threes, even though out of position. I think that this player is not particularly strong, and that when we flop a set, we're going to be getting paid a lot of the time. I think 10-8 suited there. We were just c-betting, looking to bet a lot of turn cards, spades, and cards that give us a gut shot. I feel like we get peeled on that flop by a lot of hands that are non-top pair type hands. And on the river he min bet. I kind of wanted to see what he had, just for pure information's sake. And he checked back top pair top kicker twice, which is pretty important information. Against a player like that, you probably want to be leading out the flop with all your sets and like really strong hands, because they're just never going to fold them. And if they're going to be checking back the flop, you're never going to be able to check raise against them. Yeah, so just noting that information. And then here, Silent Murda is a pretty poor player, so we're going to want to defend 4-5 suited, even though out of position. We're still going to want to defend it. And then here with pocket queens, this 50 big blind stack is just going to be folding the 3-bets way too often. And then when we 3-bet and get it in, we're not going to be that big of a favorite versus his range. So I thought it would be a lot more profitable to just call here and check raise. A lot of flops where we get an overpair, or a lot of flops that looks really bluffy of us to check raise. Here on the flop, I don't mind just folding. Folding would be 100% okay with me, but I like to call here because he's c-betting 88%, and we have a lot of equity against his air. But now on this turn, it's one of the worst turns for us to see in the deck, so we just give up. And then El Pato is a nitty regular, it seems. He's playing 11-8. And with 200 big blinds, we're just going to be able to crush him here with pocket tens the times we flop a set. So I just decided to call and check call twice and maybe check raise the river if the times we flop a set. But we didn't flop a set, so we're just giving up. But El Pato is one of those types of players that I talked about in the beginning of my video, where it's going to be really, really hard for him to profitably play, not profitably, but as profitably as 100 big blinds. He's not going to be as profitable as 100 big blinds because of the times that he's just getting ran over by people that are playing looser than him and people that are playing more pots in position against him, because he's playing so tightly and his range is so clearly defined. And it's almost exploitable, you know. He would have to do really tricky stuff with his tight range and have a really solid bluffing frequency for it to work against a player like me. And with king queen on top left, we're just checking back that turn because it's probably like one of the worst turns in the deck to double barrel. Any hand that he's calling with on the flop either improved or perceivably improved because it's really hard to have trips in this game. So he would never give us credit for a jack. That being said, I would bet the turn with pocket queens and pocket kings and pocket aces almost all the time, and obviously fold if he check raised. But it's just when you see these players that aren't three betting that often or aren't even playing that many hands, when they three bet you, when they raise from under the gun, their range is just so clearly defined. And when you have giant implied odds, it's going to be a lot easier to call, especially at 1-2 where these people just aren't capable of folding post flop when they three bet pre flop with a hand like pocket aces. I imagine at 5-10 or 10-20, the people that play like 12-8 styles are a lot better, and I can manage it a lot better because they're not stacking off in spots where they clearly shouldn't be stacking off. And raising 10-7 off in the top right table, which is not a deep table, would be a pretty big mistake, or the short stacker to the left and the half stack in the big blind. And here with ace queen suited, we don't want to isolate the regular. We want to just flat and keep the fish in the pot because we're gonna be winning way more money against the fish that limped than we will against the regular. And the times we three bet the regular, he's probably gonna be playing it back against us with a pretty strong range. The ace queen is not necessarily a favorite against, but the fish shoves, so we just fold because we're not getting that good of odds, and we have no other information on him besides the fact that he only raises 4% of hands. I wouldn't have mind a raise with 10-8 off. There's a fish in the blinds that has like $70, it looks like. And then El Pato is really tight. So we're going to win the blinds a lot of the time, and a lot of the time we're going to get to play in position against this fish who we're just going to be able to play 10-8 off in position profitably against him. We expect him to like check fold a bunch of flops and also define his range and fold a lot of rivers and stuff. We're just going to be able to also value bet him correctly and just make him fold incorrectly. Simple. Then here with Jack 4, I thought the best play in the flop was to lead out to protect my hand because almost every card in the turn is bad for my hand. But then on the turn, I can't see him calling with anything worse than Jack 4 unless he was just putting me on a stone cold bluff and looked me up with ace high. The same thing on the river. I'm just trying to check and show my hand down. I wouldn't even call a bet if he bet, but when he overbets, I just give him credit for a hand like pocket eights or like quads or something like that. And I actually do think that's a good spot for him to overbet. Just because overbet bluff, that is. Because he's repping a really wide value range. Like it could perceivably be pocket fives, sixes, sevens, eights, nines, all the way up to like tens if he decided to check those in the blind, and all of his quadded hands. So he's just gonna need to fold a pair of fours and a pair of fives, even pocket sixes. He's just gonna need to fold those hands a lot. But the problem is he just doesn't have that many air bluffy type hands when he gets to that river there, unless he's turning ace high into a bluff. And here I'm isolating this nitty tight fish who limped under the gun. I'm isolating a 7-5 suited because it plays really well 200 big blinds deep, and we have position on him. And then right now I'm just hoping that he's not limp re-raising because I really want to play this multi-way pot 7-5 suited. And very happy to flop the nuts. And you just want to bet big here because any hand that's playing back at you is playing back at you on this flop regardless of how big you bet. If you potted it, a hand like pocket twos might fold if it was otherwise calling if you bet 32, but every other hand like 6-5, pocket sevens, all those hands are. Hold on, let me extend the frame here real quick. All those other hands are just they're either calling or raising the same frequency. So here El Pato, this tight player that we talked about before, very small raises us on this flop. And then this fish behind him who has a lot of money back flats his raise. So El Pato here, let's talk about his range. His range, the weakest part of his range is pocket aces. The weakest part. And we don't even expect him to raise pocket aces that often, but that's like one of the weakest hands I could ever see him doing that with here. And then every other hand in his range is either a set or a two pair, or at worst, like 6-5 of spades. And he, of course, could also have 7-5. And then this fish, I think he sometimes has a hand like pocket queens or pocket jacks or maybe pocket aces, but most of the time he has a set. People, I just feel like I'm running into a set here way too often when I don't have a hand like 7-5, and I usually fold all other things. I would even fold a hand like two pair right here. But he could also have hands like 6-5 of spades or 7-8 of spades and stuff like that. So I think the best play here is to raise just to get more money in the pot and try to get all in on the flop. I would have liked to see myself raise to like 220, just to give El Pato the thought that maybe he has like some type of fold equity, or that maybe I have a hand like pocket aces. But I actually ended up raising to 275, which is gigantic, and I don't really like that. But I don't really think it's that big of a deal because I just think El Pato has a set like almost always, or just has a hand that he's just not folding. But I do like raising 275 a lot better than I like shoving, just because of the psychological aspect of how people like to put the rest of their stack in and how they're just clicking all in uh, more often when you do that. And then we end up being against king, queen suited and pocket threes. And I wasn't surprised. I wasn't happy when I saw that because I think I only have like 38% equity or something. So more times than not, I'm actually losing this pot. But I do have the best hand, and I do hold up and win a nice sized pot. And that's just a really good example of how you want to be playing hands like 7-5 suited, and you want to be isolating people that limp, and you want to be playing multi-way pots when you're playing with 200 big blinds. Uh, and that's just a really good example of that. And I also want to talk about El Pato's play and how I think it's really bad, and how I think that every other time he's like this time he had maybe 33% equity in this pot. But every other time he gets it in against me and that fish, he's just crushed because I either have top set or a straight here. Uh, Maybe even pocket fours, but I highly doubt I would do that with pocket fours just because I feel like El Pato has a set way too often, and he either has pocket threes or pocket sixes if I have pocket fours, and I only beat one of them. So I think if I had pocket fours, I would call flop and not be happy about playing out of position, but I would never want to just put in 200 big blinds there uh, because I would expect to run into 7-5 and better sets way too often. If I was El Pato, I would flat that flop, I think, and try to play in position, try to keep the fish in the pot, stuff like that. Especially because when he raises that flop with pocket threes, I'm probably folding like aces and kings and queens and those types of hands like 95% of the time. Just because he has like two pair a set or a set combo draw way too often, and that range just has a ton of equity versus an overpair. And being out of position, it's going to be really hard to show down an overpair on that board. So I think his raise is just he's only getting it in when I have like a really super strong hand. And also that being said, I'm probably not even c-bet bluffing this board, so I really just don't like his play at all. with pocket threes, and he probably thought it was a cooler. I got in a set and he ran into a straight, but I mean that's really not a cooler at all in a full ring game. Uh, he's gonna run into a better hand way too often. And here we just get three bet by this guy who's probably three betting a lot of hands out of the blinds, like pocket fives, sixes, sevens, like stuff like that, and random suited shit. He might even be three betting like ace jack, ace queen, ace king, king queen, king jack type of hands. So we just defend on. And he bets pretty big on this flop, and we expect him to check fold a lot of those hands, like ace jack and king queen and king jack and those types of hands. So when he bets, we're just gonna give him credit for a pair and fold until we get more information on his frequencies. So here with pocket sevens, we're really again really excited because we're playing a multi-way pot. Um, and people that flatted us don't have 200 big blinds as we would like, but we're still excited to be flopping sets like this. Yeah, so we flop a set, and this is just another spot where our range looks super strong, raising from under the gun and c-betting this flop. So we're just gonna c-bet big, 16 and a 22, and expect to get played back against by hands like ace king, king queen, king jack, pocket threes, pocket kings, of course. That would probably flat against our under the gun raise, pocket aces as well then, and hands like jacks, queens, tens are gonna call like one street. So we might, if they're gonna call one street, we might as well bet big on the flop. But then we get raised, and we get raised really small again. Not by the same guy, by a different guy. And we get raised in this flop. We're gonna run into hands like 5-6 or 4-5 or pocket like nines or stuff like that. Just wants to win the pot and not get barreled off their hand. And also a lot of air, like ace jack and stuff like that. So when we three bet here, it just looks super super strong or super super bluffy because of the fact that if they think, okay, this is one of those interesting spots where if they're a thinking player, which we don't think that this guy is that much of a thinking player, but if he was a thinking player and we three bet here, we would expect him to shove like a lot of hands, like random ace high type stuff, because to a thinking player, it would look really really bluffy if we three bet this flop. Because why would we three bet here when his raise already looks bluffy? So with any strong hand, like a pocket sevens type hand like we have, we would rather call and let him keep bluffing or let him keep value betting his worst hands. So a good thinking player knows that we know that, and if we decided to three bet this flop, a good thinking player would be like, wow, why is Achilles three betting this flop? Like my raise already looks bluffy, so Achilles is probably trying to re-bluff me, and they might shove a lot of air type of hands or even pocket. I mean, even a pair of kings a lot on this type of board, but we don't have that intricate of a read on this player, so I think it's obviously just best to call here and allow him to keep bluffing with his bluff type hands and allow him to keep value betting with his worst hands like ace king, pocket aces, pocket threes. Uh, but against some players, I would three bet that flop and expect them to ship like gut shots and ace high type of hands. So here he bets really big, and it's just really clear that he wants to be all in. I type into the chat 3-3 or king king or ace ace, and then I go all in. And he does have pocket aces, and we hold. Yeah, and I typed into that chat the three hands that I thought he could have there. Because just when he bets that big, it's really clear that he is looking for value to me and isn't trying to get me to fold, especially with the timing and how he very, very quickly did it. Uh, but yeah, on dry flops like that, anytime someone bet three bets, they're repping such a narrow, narrow, narrow range that it can look very, very bluffy to a thinking player that already knows that his flop raise looks really, really, really narrow. So here with Queen 8 suited, this player I don't think is that good in the big blind, so I think that we're going to be able to profitably raise Queen 8 suited and not get 3-bet that much pre-flop and be able to value bet correctly and bluff correctly. So here's a good flop because we flop a gut shot and an overcard. And we do expect him to flat us here with a pretty wide range of hands like King Queen, King Jack, uh, Jack Queen, 7 8, and 6 7 type of hands. And I would not have mind if I bet this turn, just because he's gonna be folding those like King Queen, King Jack type hands. But the turn didn't really change his range if he had a pair on the flop. So I decided that I didn't want to play a guessing game with how strong or weak his range actually is in that board, and I wanted to just check fold until I figured out more about that particular player. In which case, I might very well barrel that turn because I would expect him to fold a large part of his range that's just calling with like gut shots and overcards in the flop. I'm hoping we find another river situation where we can go over an overbet. Uh, can't really remember the hands that are in this video. I played this just the other day, and I tried recording the session right after I played it, but my computer froze for some reason, and I didn't get to finish the recording, and I lost everything that I recorded. I know I made a good overbet bluff yesterday that if I could pull up the hand after the session, I'll show you guys. Here with ace nine, I think we just want to fold against this short stacker. He's really, really tight, and under the gun is really super strong, so we're not going to be making a lot of money by doing that. If Al Pato on the left had 200 big blinds, I would have loved to flat that his raise with ace 8 suited. We'll win a lot of small pots with top pair, and we'll win a lot of super big pots with a flush, and with like combo draws and stuff like that. And he's already showed us the propensity to misplay big pots and multi-way pots and stuff like that. So I finally got on another deep table here, brought it in the top right, and took out that 100 big blind table. So hopefully we could get some more bigger hands going on over there. And here with ace king, that's a really dry flop, and I wouldn't mind betting that flop and then continuing on like any, I guess, ace or king. There's not many other cards you want to continue on because a 10, a jack, and a queen all improve the range that they call with in the flop. But I decided to check fold because I was playing 32-26 at that table and didn't think I was going to get much credit. Ace 8 suited wouldn't be a bad raise here because of the big blind, who is not a very strong player and has 560 bucks. But I guess I fold in. And here's same thing with pocket threes. We're just gonna check fold because we're out of position to 3 people. Here with ace 3, I like this raise a lot. I would like it a lot more though if we were deep against the big blind and the small blind. It's just people aren't gonna expect you to have ace 3 from the under the gun spot, and you're gonna a lot of times your hand's just gonna be concealed, and when you hit a big hand, it's gonna be even more concealed. And in addition to that, you can rep a lot of hands that are in your range, are in the perceived under the gun range. So on any like king high, queen high flop, and like just dry flops, you're gonna be taking those down a lot, and you're gonna be able to double barrel correctly, and just people are gonna give you a lot of credit. I just like raising those hands because the times that you do hit a big hand, I think you're getting paid off a lot. And here with pocket sixes, there's a lot of hands that have a lot of equity against us, so I'm just trying to show it down. Um, I guess I wouldn't mind betting that flop, but I just feel like it's a high variance play that's just not going to be that profitable, if profitable at all. So I checked and tried to play a turn, and on the turn, the nitty player let out for almost pot, so I think we just fold in. That's good. And then I fold 6-8 suited under the gun, which I'd normally raise, but we've been playing a lot of hands to that bottom right table, so thought it'd be best to just pitch that for that time. Sorry if the video is skipping a little bit. It seems to be skipping for me, but you're not missing any action. I promise you that. It's just going by a little bit quicker. So here with pocket jacks, we're just going to bet this ace high flop because otherwise it would be hard to show down. If we check called, we'd expect him to bluff turns and rivers and also value bet very thinly on turns and rivers. So we would be putting ourselves in a bad spot by checking that flop. So we're just going to bet, rep the ace, and he's also going to call us with a lot of worse hands, so that's fine. But he folded the flop, so we just took the pot down. And here with pocket sevens, the preflop razor checks, but hold on. The preflop razor checked the flop, and we don't have any information on Silent Murder's range, and we do think he's going to call a lot, but we don't know what he's going to be calling with. And he's going to be calling with hands that have like a range that has a lot of equity. Like even a hand like King 10 has like a lot of equity against our hand here. So we just check back the flop, but the turn was a 9, and they both check to us again. So I think betting here for value and for protection, we probably get called by like a lot of 4x's or some ace highs, pocket 6s, 7s, pocket 8s. And of course, we don't really expect him to have a jack that often because like king jack, ace jack, 10 jack, jack 9. Maybe he could have a jack 9, but those types of hands are going to be betting out on the turn at least for value and for protection. So we're just betting here. And then when he calls, we expect him to have like worse pairs like we discussed, or a flush jar or a straight jar or something like that. But he ended up having Jack 7 of hearts, which is really shocking because that's a really, really strong hand that he didn't bet the flop or the turn with. So that's fine, and that's going to happen sometimes. But all you can do there is just take a note and say that he's passive, or he plays hands from behind, bluff catches, stuff like that, etc. And that's just good information to have on people. So I'm happy with that hand because I learned a lot about Silent Murder there. And that information is going to allow me to win more money from him in the future. Here with Ace Queen, we don't expect to make much money flatting Tommy here because he's so tight and he's pretty aggressive. But I just want to have Ace Queen in my range here to protect my other hands and make it easier for me to show down other hands the times that I have them. So like here when I have Ace Queen on this board, it's gonna make it a lot harder for him to run bluffs against me when I have a top pair type of hand here. Maybe if the board was like Queen 7-5 or something like that, and I flat the flop with pocket 10s, I want to have Ace Queen in my range so I can call his double barrels profitably and give him incentive to not double barrel me. So the times I have pocket 10s, I could show them down more easily. So it's just standard to call the flop in the turn because we do expect a player like this to be double barreling us here with hands like pocket 5s or pocket 7s, stuff like that, trying to get us to fold a jack or trying to get us to fold a hand like ace 10 or king 10 or something like that. But then on the river, he bets half pot, and it's just, I don't think I'm beating any of his value range. I don't think he's ever betting 3 streets with king queen. I think he has a set here like 50% of the time and has overpair the rest of the time. I thought about shoving to get him to fold aces and kings, but I just think he has a set way too often for me to do that profitably. So yeah, I'm really comfortable folding that river, and I like my flop and turn call. a lot of players on that river are going to think, I have top pair, top kicker, he bet half pot call. But that's actually a really bad play because your top pair, top kicker on that board is pretty much the same thing as like top pair, bottom kicker, just because he doesn't ever value bet a hand like king queen or even ace queen there. Uh, he's value betting aces, kings, pocket queens, pocket jacks, pocket sixes, pocket fours, or whatever the other sets were on that board. And I mean, maybe sometimes I would imagine he would bet three streets like that with ace queen, but I don't see him doing that often. So just really consider what a player's value range is, and then also, I mean, we have to consider what his bluffing range is too. But uh, when he bets half pot, we don't imagine that he really wants us to fold. So his bluffing range is probably null. And here, I like betting big. I would have bet maybe 18. I would have liked better here, just because they're calling with all their aces no matter what you bet, and their range is just pretty inelastic for playing back there. But maybe for balance sake, I bet 16 because I'd be betting 16 with my bluffs. Okay, pocket jacks in the big blind. Hopefully something can happen here. And then we get to defend a min raise with 4-7 suited, which we're really happy about because we're getting like 100 to 1 pre-flop or something like that. Okay, then here we flop a gut shot with a backdoor flush draw. This guy who min raised under the gun likely has like a pretty wide range because he's only min raising, and he's probably raising a pretty linear range regardless of his position if he's just min raising. So we don't really want to check call because we don't have enough equity to check call, and we're probably going to get barreled a lot of the time and stuff like that. And I don't like check folding because we do have this gut shot and backdoor flush draw. So I like to bet out, and if the preflop raiser called, I would probably bet a lot of turns because I expect him to call with a little bit wider of a range than M Sparks Magic or whatever this guy's name is. But I still expect M Sparks Magic to flat me here with hands like pocket sixes, 4-5, like not maybe ace three some of the time, but not that often, and then like pocket sevens, eights, nines, pocket tens if he limps it, and then of course like ace jack, queen jack, king jack if he's limping those hands, but he's pretty tight. So we don't expect him to limp those hands that often, and the overwhelming majority of the time we expect him to have a hand like pocket sixes, sevens, and eights, maybe pocket nines too. But the problem with betting this turn is we are repping a much narrower value range. Like we're repping a set 5-3, which we can't have, ace jack, king jack, and we're just some of the time we're not even going to be betting the turn for value with those types of hands. So I think our turn bet looks a lot more like air if we bet on the turn, then it looks like we're betting for value. So I decided to check this turn and to try to bet the river to get him to fold a hand like pocket sixes or sevens. Because I think that looks like we have a much wider value range. It looks like we almost always have a jack or that we missed a check raise with a 5. I like this bet a lot. I feel like they're folding sixes, sevens, eights almost always. And here in the bottom, we're check folding king queen on that board, so it's a bad board for us. And then here we're flatting pocket kings because if we 3-bet, we don't expect him to play back that often. Here, I'm gonna just pause. We don't expect him to play back that often. Like he's not gonna 4-bet shove pocket nines against us or 4-bet shove ace king. We don't expect him to be that type of player. So we're just flatting and playing in position here. And when he bets $10 in the 18, we don't exactly know what his range is, but I don't like a raise here because I feel like our hand isn't that vulnerable at all. And I feel like we're gonna get double barreled a lot when he bets so small on the flop because it looks like with any type of strong hand that we would raise the flop because he's betting nearly half pot. So I like calling here and seeing what he does on the turn. And then on the river, I think Sparks Magic or whatever this guy's name is has like pocket nines almost always. So we call, and then the turn puts up a double flush draw, and he bets 18 into like 38 or 40 or something like that. So I think now we have to raise not only for value but for protection because there's just so many hands that have a lot of outs, and we don't want to play a guessing game on the river when one of these flush draws hits, and it might even be a scare card for him if he has a worse hand like ace 9 or ace 8 or pocket 10s or pocket jacks or something like that. So definitely raising this turn, and raising this turn also looks really bluffy because, like I said, perceivably any strong hand like pocket 2s or 3s or 8s would raise that flop and just try to get value from like pocket aces and kings and queens and stuff like that. Uh, so raising the turn looks bluffy, and we don't expect him to fold much of his value range. And then on the river, I was trying to figure out whether I wanted to bet really small and try to get him to do something spazzy, like bluff shove, a missed draw, or something like that, and maybe like call with his like weak 7-8 type hands, or just value bet shove and get him to call with his worst overpairs, and he might even still call with hands like 7-8 and stuff like that. But I just decided to shove, and he really quickly looked me up with pocket 10s, which I don't think is a good play. Because I think he's going to see me have a much better hand there a lot of the time. I'm probably doing the same thing with pocket jacks and pocket queens. Uh, and of course, pocket eights, pocket nines, and 8-9. But I might raise pocket twos and pocket threes in the flop. So those hands might not be in my range. But yeah, I think flatting pocket kings in that spot is a good example of why you don't want to three bet hands like that. Because we would never stack him there. Uh, pre if we three bet, and maybe even if he calls, he's not check raising that flop, and he's not check calling multiple streets with pocket tens there, or at least he shouldn't be. Uh, but flatting allows us to pick off a lot more of his bluffs post flop and get more value from his weaker hands in his range, like pocket tens or pocket nines or ace queen type hands like that. But of course, three betting pocket kings there is always going to be profitable. It's just not the most profitable. And flatting is also more high variance. Some of the time he's gonna have a set there that he's slow played or played really weirdly. Uh, Whereas if I three bet pre-flop, he would have folded that. But it's still gonna be more profitable in the long run. And on average, I think to flatten those spots. And if Tommy had 200 big blinds, I would have loved to flat with King 10 suited there. But he just doesn't have enough money for me to properly play it against his super tight range, where he's going to be dominating us a lot of the time. Or not going to be making flushes and straights and trips and two pairs enough to win the money back. The times that we just have to fold the flop, or the times that he has like ace king or ace 10 or stuff like that. And here with pocket nines, we're just extremely happy to call and play in position here against this person who's likely a fish. But unfortunately, we get the suckiest flop ever, and we don't have good position, so that if the pre-flop raiser checks, we're not going to be able to profitably bet this flop and take it away. So we just give up. But it looks like I'm sitting out of these tables, so that's the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, as always, feel free to PM me or post in the forums. I'm really open to discussing the hands I play in these videos, so take care.